Hey guys, welcome to another review where today I'm checking out this. Now you might think it's a light. Some eagle-eyed viewers might think it's an LED light. Actually, I think a more accurate description of this would be a supernova compressed into a large Coke bottle. Other brands are available. This is the LED 3000 from Golden Eagle. Now, disclaimer, Golden Eagle did send me this light for free to test and review, but this is an unbiased, honest review. Now, there was two appeals for me for checking out this light when they got in touch with me. The first is simply the fact that it is a 300 watt light. Prior to getting hold of this, my main key light was what I'm using now, the Godox SL60W, which is a 60 watt light. Now, in fairness, this light as a key light for these types of videos works perfectly fine. Like right now, I'm at a 50th of a second shutter speed, f2.8 aperture, ISO 100. That light's at 100% through an octabox, and I'm exposed perfectly fine. Where I found that this light causes limitations, however, is if I've ever tried to shoot videos outdoors and I've maybe wanted a bit of a fill light, it's not powerful enough. If I've been shooting B-roll footage of products in here and I want to do slow motion footage, so I'm at 100 FPS, I'm then dropping 2 stops of light, having to up my shutter speed. I don't want to widen my aperture. In fact, more often than not, I want to narrow down my aperture for the B-roll shots. So that light just isn't powerful enough and I end up having to up my ISO, which then obviously risks noise in the video. Whereas obviously a 300 watt light would solve that problem. The second big appeal for me for this light was the price point. Now, there are other 300 watt LED lights available. Hell, Godox themselves do a 300 watt LED, but that retails for about £700 in the UK. Golden Eagle is selling this for $500, so substantially cheaper than rival 300 watt lights. Now, for that $500, you are getting a 300 watt LED light with a CRI rating of 95 and an output of over 31,500 lumens. Right now, I'm being lit by just the SL60 at full power. And this is the Golden Eagle at 5% power. If I ramp this up to 100% power, I can't see very well now. And like I said before, there's been times where I've been shooting outdoors and I've wanted a fill light against the natural light, and 60 watts just isn't powerful enough. Whereas with this thing, not a problem whatsoever. Here's some test shots that I did earlier outside in the garden. Now, the weather was mild overcast, so it wasn't blaring broad daylight, but it was still pretty bright ambient light. And this thing at 100% power was able to act less like a fill light and more like a key light, which is nuts for outdoors. Now, obviously, you know, that was practiced with stills. Realistically, if you're after such a bright light for shooting stills, you'd probably want a flash. They're a hell of a lot more convenient than these. But for shooting videos outdoors or anything where you're going to be wanting, again, very fast shutter speeds, very bright light, absolutely ideal. The light itself, the construction, is pretty insane. It's still built like an absolute tank. It weighs quite a bit as well. It's 3.6 kilos, which is about double the weight of the SL60. So hardly a travel-friendly light, but then that's to be expected given that it's 300 watts. It's got a substantially bigger heat sink inside to dissipate all that heat. Another reason why this is quite a big light is the fact that the power unit is all built into it. So it's not like some lights you see where they take a bulk of the power unit out and have it as a separate power block. Everything is all in the one light here. Now, these sorts of things are personal preference. You might prefer having the separate blocks so the light's smaller, so it's maybe more convenient to carry around. I personally like having it all in the one unit because I despise having power bricks dangling around and trailing all over the floor. And the design of the power outlet on this I like as well, because on the SL60, the power plug goes straight into the back here. If you snag the cable, if you trample on it, you risk either damaging the plug as it pulls down or worse still, tipping the whole light over. I much prefer this light because the plug is square on the bottom here, which not only saves a little bit of distance on the cable, but more importantly means if you snag the cable, It just comes clean out with no real risk to damaging the cable or the lighting unit. Now, if I had to summarize the design of this light, apart from big or bright, would be simple. The whole thing's simplistic. Simplistic design, even the packaging, to be fair, was about as simple as you can get. It's the light and all the accessories in a cardboard box surrounded by polystyrene packaging. There's no fancy carry cases or anything like that, which again, personal preferences. Some people might want to be taking this light traveling around everywhere. You might be someone who only uses the light on occasion, so you're going to be packing it down quite a lot and you want a carry case to store it, in which case you might be a bit disappointed that there isn't one. I personally couldn't care about that. The light came out the box, it went on the light stand and has been pretty much there for the past few weeks. A carry case would just be something else that I've got to store. Even the accessories that come with it, pretty simplistic. You get the power cable, you get a Bowens mount metal dish, and you get a little basic remote control. Now, even though this is a very basic infrared remote, it's got a power button, a brightness up and a brightness down button, and that is it. This has been invaluable to me, again, because when the key light is very high up in the air and angled down, the power switch and the brightness are right up at the back of the light, so I can't reach it. So to change any settings or turn the light on, I'd have to drop the light, make the alterations, and put the light back up, whereas with the remote, I can do it all from right in front of the camera. The power switch can just stay on, and then you just push the power button. And for reference, that is only at 1% brightness, which again is another feature about this light that I like, is the fact that it runs all the way down to 1%. It's a 5600 color temperature light. Unfortunately, you can't change that, but that's a 1% brightness. If you press and hold the power button, it will ramp all the way up to 100%. Now, there is a slight nuisance about this light that I've noticed, a very, very small one. If I just power the light off using the remote, it's at 1% now. If I power it back on with the remote, the light comes back on at 1%. But if I don't use the remote and I power it off at the switch, when I then power the light back on, it fires up at 100% and then drops back down. And it only drops back down to whatever the power rating was the last time you turned it off with the remote. If I wind it up to 30%, power off and power back up, it resets back to 1. Now, you might be able to hear when I'm starting this up or not. There is a fan that's running inside. I'll just go quiet for a second so you can listen to this. The fan speed on this remains consistent, so it doesn't matter whether you're running at 1% or 100%, the fan speed never changes. And I have had this running for prolonged periods of time, and it never gets particularly hot. Even running at 100% for well over an hour, it obviously gets quite warm, as would be expected, but it controls its temperature extremely well, which given the size of the heatsink on this, I would kind of hope is the case. And then there's obviously the dial on the back for adjusting the brightness. And then if you push the wheel in, you can scroll through some limited options on the screen as well. So the first is that you can jump through 4 different presets of lighting effects. Now these will fire off at obviously whatever brightness you've got set in, so all these are firing off at only 1% here. And there is a countdown timer, so it will give you 9 or 10 cycles of each special effect before it stops going through them. So that's A. This is B. C. And D. Okay, switch that one off. And then you can also assign this light to one of 4 different channels. And then there's a selector switch on the side of the remote to correspond to whatever channel number you want. And then for mounting modifiers, as I mentioned before, it's a standard Bowens mount. There is also an umbrella holder on the bottom as well. There's a tension handle on the side for adjusting, obviously, the pivot of the light, which then tightens up. And there is a quick release button on the side so you can change the angle of the handle if it's in your way. The only arguable drawback of this handle is that it's not a toothed grip, it's a smooth turn one. So you're going to want to make sure you've got that handle very tight given the weight of this light. But really, I think that pretty much sums up everything that needs to be known about the Golden Eagle 3000. It's a hell of a big light, but it's bloody bright in the process. Sure, it's not got much in the way of frills and fancy accessories, but if you're just after a bare bones 300 watt light, I'd say this is a pretty good option to consider. So I will leave a link to this in the description down below if you wish to go and check it out. While you're down there, if you have any questions or queries, please leave them in the comment box down below. If you enjoyed this video or you found it helpful and you haven't already done so, then please consider hitting the like and subscribe button, and then hopefully we'll see you in the next video.